Someone could experience a trauma or something in their life, potentially have PTSD, and that could affect how something genetic like manifests for them.
Yes, exactly. And so it could be that it stays dormant for their whole life. And they're seeing this in antibody studies where most of us in the general population have at least have one antibody for type 1 diabetes, the autoimmune version of diabetes. And we don't get the disease. And even those who are at risk, they tend to have more antibodies that accumulate over time, and eventually it shows up as type 1 diabetes. But those antibodies can actually come and go. And so you can have antibodies and they can actually reverse. And so I suspect that that's also all epigenetics and what's going on in your environment.
Gotcha.
And so the third, what's that?
I said there was number 2, yes.
There was number 2. Number 3 is, I think this is something that's still really common mistake in a way, a common error in medical care and healthcare in general, is this thought that if trauma is the cause or the risk factor, it means it's in your head or that it's psychological. Mm-hmm. And the science is really showing that that's not the case. Adverse experiences influence our genes through epigenetics, and they actually affect our physiology and our hormones. And so even mental health conditions, which were like PTSD in particular, which is the thing that started to get us to wake up a little bit about what trauma is something that's going on in the nervous system and in the hormones, and it's a physiological, biological process that's happening.
Gotcha. So like, you mentioned, right, it's not just, or if it's not psychological specifically, like what causes, is it biology that causes symptoms that people experience as a result of PTSD, or like, how do you kind of, make sense of that?
There's exciting research coming out showing that it is in the biology, and that it's a survival response that gets stuck in the on position. So we get stuck in fight or flight mode, or we get stuck in freeze, or something in between. So that sense of hypervigilance or anxiety can be on the fight flight end of the spectrum. And things like chronic fatigue, which is the chronic illness that I've had for 20 years, that I've been climbing out of using all these principles that we're learning about trauma. Fatigue, brain fog, numbness, emotional numbness, those are all on the freeze end of the continuum. And Dr. Robert Navio at UC San Diego has done research in metabolics. And what he's come up with is a theory called the cell danger response. And so we're starting to get science happening at all these different levels of the body and in the physiology. And so this sense that it's a survival response is really starting to show up in a lot of places. And there's a great article, people can look it up in Discover magazine, called, it's Grandma's Experience Leaves a Mark on Your Genes. It's a great description, really easy to digest, about a discovery these researchers did at McGill University with rat pups. When they're not nurtured, or when they're raised by a less nurturing dam, they end up with a higher sensitivity to stress. In their cortisol receptors are different, and these are epigenetic changes that last a lifetime and into next generations. Mm-hmm. And that article talks about that. So that's actually number 4, is that it's not psychological, it's a physiological threat response or survival response.